Do you know there are rules you must follow in the forest at night? Not the ones in a manual, but the real rules. You don't? Then perhaps you're very lucky. But by the end of this story, you'll know the rules too. And once you know them, you can never unlearn them. My name is Michael Sampson. For 16 years, I was a ranger at Northern Ridge National Park. As I write this, I'm no longer there. I've turned in my uniform, given back my badge, because I broke the forest's most important rule: never be the last one to leave. As I write this, my hands are shaking. It's not from too much coffee. Every time I remember that night, my body reacts on its own. My heart rate goes up. I start to sweat, and I become hypersensitive to the sounds around me. It's as if I'm still in that forest. Perhaps I shouldn't be prying, but it's a habit, so I decided to tell the story. It all started 16 years ago. My choice to become a ranger wasn't by chance. When I was 10, my family was camping, and I met a ranger there. He was a big man, full beard, sunglasses. He had a dignity about him, like a king ruling the entire forest. When my sister stepped on a rusty nail, he held a flashlight for me while answering my 1,000 questions, one by one. That's when I decided, someday, I would be a guardian of the forest too. Anyway, I didn't go to college. I didn't feel the need. I jumped into conservation work, studying at night only when the generator was running. I got my qualifications, earned my badge, and I've been here ever since. 16 years. My colleagues came and went like the seasons. At first, I couldn't understand why people left so often. The forest was beautiful, the work was meaningful, and the pay wasn't bad. But now, I can imagine. Perhaps they instinctively sensed something, but I stayed. Me, and of course, Bailey. Bailey is my partner, an Australian shepherd. I adopted her 12 years ago from the Oak Hill shelter. Abandoned by a family who moved out of state, she was skinny and not very friendly. But when I first met her, she sat by my boot and didn't move. She chose me. Since then, we've been inseparable. Bailey isn't just a dog. She's a colleague, and sometimes she makes better decisions than I do. Kids on school trips flock to her, and even those who are indifferent at first are always won over in the end. And the treats. She has a sixth sense, the ability to sniff out granola bars. Jokes aside, it wasn't just that. Bailey truly had a sixth sense. She'd sense thunder 30 minutes before it struck and avoid certain spots the day before a landslide. And most importantly, she had the ability to read people. She could spot malicious people, liars, dangerous people. We had a set rhythm. In the morning, we'd wake up before sunrise. While I brewed coffee on the old stove, Bailey would sit by the ranger station door, ears perked, gazing into the tree line. Breakfast was usually toast, or something microwaved if the generator was running. If not, cold cereal and lukewarm milk from the cooler. Looking back, Bailey's morning ritual might have had a deeper meaning. She gazed into the tree line as if checking what had happened during the night. The scent of the air, the direction of the wind, changes in bird calls. She was reading the forest's daily report. And then, we'd begin our patrols. Patrolling meant walking the main paths, checking for fallen trees, clearing debris and branches, ensuring signs weren't vandalized and cabins weren't trespassed. Sometimes we'd find beer cans or signs of illegal bonfires. The work of city kids playing survival experts. I'd write reports, take photos, and leave warnings. Bailey loved sniffing the ashes. As if the ashes told stories, she'd keep sniffing them if I let her. We'd take a break midway through the morning, usually by the lake. Bailey would chase frogs, and I'd sit on the pier, watching the mist rise from the water. Sometimes I'd wonder if I could have done something bigger with my life, but I always returned to the quiet. You can't get this kind of quiet in the busy real world. People think a ranger's job is just babysitting trees, but it's more than that. Fixing broken fences, pulling people out of rivers, teaching kids how not to get eaten by bears. Endless paperwork, tourists who don't listen, late-night searches for missing persons. Sometimes, even carrying bodies back. Not often, but enough. Still, I loved it all, even the tough days. Once, we had a full team, 6 of us in total. Jake, Amanda, Torres, Pete, and Ellie, all former scouts. Eagle badges, merit ribbons, survival camp veterans. They arrived with hopeful faces, clipboards and whistles, full of plans. I watched them grow, each at their own pace. We became a kind of family. Pete even carved a sign for our station wall, the Green Watch. It might have been cheesy, but we were proud of it. Thursday nights were our tradition. Everyone would gather and share the week's events. Ellie would show her sketches of wildflowers, Torres would take photos of repaired machinery, and Pete would talk about his new woodworking projects. We'd laugh, complain, and sometimes have philosophical discussions late into the night. Back then, we truly thought we were invincible. But as time passed, everyone left, got better jobs, had kids, moved out west. Amanda was the last one to leave before me. She left in the spring. She said she wanted to try something closer to civilization. I think the forest was starting to get to her, but she never said it. She just had a smile that was too big, and she patted Bailey's head one last time. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to know. Amanda's last few weeks were clearly not normal. She started waking up in the middle of the night, staring out the window, and sometimes she would ask me,
"Do you hear that?"
I didn't hear anything, but Bailey would perk up her ears and look in the same direction as Amanda. Now it's just me. Or rather, it was just me. I think that's the real reason I'm writing this journal. I'm not a hero. I'm not some movie star ranger with a chiseled jaw and a tragic past. I'm just a man who loves the forest. A man who thought if you respect the land, it would respect you back. But that was wrong. It's not always true. The forest doesn't care who you are. And something changed in this place. I'm not ready to write about that part yet. Not yet. I just wanted to start from the beginning, from the good parts. The parts where Bailey still rolled in pine needles and the team still told stupid jokes over the radio. The parts where the worst I had to worry about was a broken fuel tank or a hiker not following trail markers. That part was real. It had meaning, and if I write it all down, one piece at a time, maybe I can remember what it felt like before everything went wrong. It started this summer. I think it was June. I don't remember the exact date, but I'll never forget the feeling. It was hellishly hot, but there was something buzzing in the air, like the whole park was waking up from a long sleep and stretching its limbs. Summer was always like that. Families packed into minivans would flood in, kids sticking their heads out the windows like dogs, yelling about marshmallows and fishing rods. Dads would try to back trailers into parking spots like it was the first time they'd ever reversed a car, and moms would clutch campground guides like buried treasure maps. Peak season meant all hands on deck. People trying to barbecue on hiking trails, little kids chasing raccoons, teenagers playing Bear Grylls past curfew. We used to joke that we needed more rangers just to keep humans from hurting themselves. Bailey was having a blast. She trotted from campsite to campsite like she was the mayor of the place. Everyone knew her. People even started bringing dog biscuits specially for her, hoping they might run into her. The forest was full of the sound of life. Insects, birds, chipmunks chattering as they darted through the undergrowth, and laughter. It was a common sound in the first few weeks of summer. Laughter before sunburns and mosquito bites, before realizing that nature isn't always fair. I thought it was going to be a good season, one of the busiest. The first report came in early July. Around 5 p.m., the station phone rang. E-Boy and his parents had come to report something strange he'd seen in the eastern woods. I met them at Station 2, near the gravel parking lot. The parents looked embarrassed. The boy didn't. He was about 14, named Jimmy. Skinny, wearing an oversized black band t-shirt, the kind kids wear these days. He said he'd wandered a bit past the boundary markers. He wanted to take some pictures for a school project or something while his parents were grilling. He pulled out an old iPhone. The screen was cracked and badly damaged. He showed me 2 photos on it. Both were grainy and too zoomed in. Mostly just trees. But in the second photo, near the center of the frame, there was something. Tall, unnaturally tall, and skinny, like skin stretched over bone. It stood between 2 trees, about 12 feet high. It had arms. At least, long shapes that looked like arms. As I stared at the photos, a cold chill ran down my spine. The quality was bad, but the silhouette was unnatural. Not human proportions, not animal either. It was as if someone tried to recreate a human shape from memory and got the important parts wrong. But what first shocked me was the shape of its head. It wasn't a head. More like metal speakers or horns, like an old air raid siren. I had a strange feeling, but I laughed it off. Could be anything. Old mining equipment. It's the light. Phone cameras add a lot of noise in the dark. The parents looked relieved. They just wanted to go back to their campsite. But the boy stared at me, not angry, just quiet, as if he knew I didn't believe him. That wasn't the end of it. A week later, there was another report, this time from a college couple hiking near the Fire Tower Trail. Apparently, they saw something in the distance. Something tall, unmoving, and pale gray. They thought it was a moose at first, but then noticed it didn't have legs like one. It moved in a way they'd never seen before. There were no photos, just that it stood there while they watched, then disappeared when they looked away for a second. Again, I brushed it off. Heat stroke. 6 miles uphill in August, your eyes can play tricks on you, but I made a note of it anyway. Then it kept coming. Every few days, different people, different locations, all similar descriptions. Something unnaturally tall, misshapen, seen in the distance, always in or near the old mining area of the forest. The stories started circulating online. Forums, Reddit threads, conspiracy theory blogs. One post called it Siren Head, said it was some kind of old urban legend. But not here, up north, in Canada. Nobody believes such ridiculous stories. But even if they don't believe, if you spark curiosity, people will flock. And this rumor, naturally, attracted attention. More hikers started asking strange questions. We were pressured to put up more signs near the mines. But no matter how much we did, people ignored them. Of course, the kind of people drawn by rumors are the type who, if told not to look for monsters, will do the opposite. For a while, park operations ran smoothly. The Siren Head story spread quickly. We didn't start it, but we didn't exactly stop it either. People started calling it Siren Head Park online, and the word spread like wildfire. We had a record number of visitors. Kids laughed. Teenagers dared each other to go monster hunting after sunset, and families roasted marshmallows as if nothing bad could happen. The first incident I got a report about seemed minor. A man twisted his ankle on an old cliff path near the upper stream. The rocks there are loose. Honestly, it wasn't surprising. We blamed carelessness and told ourselves it could have happened to anyone. But the second incident was harder to explain. A woman ran into Station 3 in the middle of the night. Her eyes looked like she hadn't slept in days. She said her tent was slashed, not by a bear. She was sure of it. Something clean, a straight cut, like with a knife, but too high off the ground to make sense. Still, we didn't panic. The only thing that bothered me was that both the man with the twisted ankle and the woman who ran and said they heard strange sounds. It sounded as if it was calling to them. And then pets started disappearing. First, a cat, leashed outside a camper overnight. Then, a beagle, known for wandering, but always came back. Then 2 dogs disappeared simultaneously from opposite sides of the park. We found one leash, still tied to a tree, but neatly chewed through. This time, I felt a sense of crisis. I started keeping Bailey closer. She seemed to dislike it, wanting to run free. She was used to running ahead, checking clearings, and coming back to me as if she were in charge. But now, I kept her on a leash even on open paths. She didn't resist, but she looked at me with an expression of not understanding. Soon after, people started going missing. At first, just for a few hours. Families returning from a hike, one person missing. Then entire families disappeared. A family of 4. Their tent was still zipped up. Food untouched. The radio silent. We found them days later, a mile from where they should have been, all sitting under a tree. No one was talking. When I found the family, a chill ran down my spine. They were sitting in a perfect line. Father, mother, and 2 children, as if someone had arranged them. None of the 4 remembered how they got there. One kept looking for his brother, who was sitting right next to him. The father said he just sat there. The mother had a blank expression, sitting like a robot that had been unplugged. That night, I couldn't sleep. The calls came in more often. People said they saw something moving beyond the trees. Something tall, too tall, and always quiet, never chasing, just watching or standing. Then they said the voices started, not from the trees, not something we ourselves heard, but people kept saying they followed the sounds. A baby crying, someone calling their name, a recognizable voice. Sometimes a mother, sometimes a sibling, sometimes someone they hadn't seen in years. Some said they thought someone was in trouble. We found one woman waist deep in a thicket of thorns, her clothes torn, her legs bloody. She said she was following her husband's voice, but he had been dead for 5 years. Another man walked 5 miles off the path, trying to find a child he thought was lost. When we got to him, he didn't say a word. He just stared into the forest, breathing heavily as if he'd run a marathon. And then, a boy fell. It was one of the tourist groups. We were walking them along the ridge. It was a beautiful spot where you could see the waterfall from above. There's a place where the trees open up, and the land drops sharply down to a flowing stream. I only turned my back for 10 seconds. The next thing I knew, Bailey was barking, and half the group was screaming. The boy had walked over the edge, without hesitation, as if he didn't see it, as if he didn't even try to stop. He fell straight into the water. I ran. Bailey ran faster. She followed him, entering the freezing current without hesitation. In the raging torrent, she bravely bit into the collar of his jacket. Somehow, she dragged him out of the river. He was gasping for air, probably having swallowed a lot of water. When he calmed down, he told me he heard someone crying for help. It sounded like his sister's voice, but his sister, it turned out, was in a cabin 2 miles away. It made the news. The local paper ran the story. A big headline: Hero Dog Saves Boy from River Fall. Bailey was awarded a medal from the town. As her partner, I hung it on her collar, but she tried to chew it off. After that, we canceled tourist tours, at least for a while. But the kids who didn't understand the gravity of the situation didn't stop. They kept sneaking in after hours, sliding under fences, jumping over signs. With cameras and flashlights and encouragement from friends, hoping to catch a monster, go viral, and become famous. Day by day, they became harder to find. We'd comb the grounds for hours. Sometimes they'd come back on their own, but usually not. One night, we found 3 of them near an old mine shaft, huddled with their backs against a crumbling wall, their eyes wide like saucers. None of them spoke for the rest of the night. They didn't need to speak. At this point, I knew what they had seen. The photo I saw was probably not something to laugh off. It wasn't just noise either. That monster truly exists. After the kids witnessed it, everything got worse. No one laughed anymore. The chatter on the radio stopped. Patrol footsteps quickened, and everyone intentionally avoided the eastern woods. It wasn't an official directive, but everyone understood. And finally, bodies started appearing. First, animals, mostly deer, found in places they shouldn't be, lying in the middle of a trail or right next to a ranger cabin. Whole bodies, torn apart in incomprehensible ways. No teeth marks, no signs of a struggle, just opened up, ribs scattered like broken branches, organs completely removed. At first, some said it was bears or coyotes. Perhaps it was denial, but the bodies were too clean. No bloodstains, no drag marks, as if something had quickly, neatly processed them and left the rest. Bailey wouldn't go near them. Every time we found a body, she'd lower her ears and back away, not even sniffing, just staring at the trees, with an expression as if something was waiting there. One afternoon, we found another deer carcass. This one wasn't fresh. Flies were everywhere. A leg was missing, not torn off, just gone, as if removed, not eaten. Its head was twisted backward, its tongue hanging out like a dry rag. That night, for the first time in years, I barricaded the cabin door. Soon after, the park was closed. They didn't say it was because of the sightings or accidents. Officially, it was due to budget cuts. They explained that declining visitor numbers made it difficult to maintain all stations. They called it seasonal reallocation, and everyone was to be transferred to other parks by autumn. But I knew the truth. They needed to clear this place out quickly. Whatever we had stirred up with our foolish stories and jokes, it was real, and no one wanted to stay and find out what it was. It was beyond that point. Most of the team left within days. I can't blame them. I stayed, not because I thought I could fix something. I just couldn't leave like that. This place had been my home for 16 years. I knew every trail, every tree, every bend in the river. It felt wrong to just leave without saying goodbye. I offered to do the final cleanup. Just 2 more weeks. That's all I asked for. I tried to leave Bailey at my sister's house 3 times. It was 2 miles from the park. I explained I had work and wanted her to be safe, but each time she escaped the house and came back to me. We took our last patrol, just the 2 of us. We removed signs, locked supply sheds, and checked for any lingering campers. I knew there wouldn't be any, of course, but I was thorough, a habit ingrained over years. By then, silence reigned, too silent. It felt different from the trails before, as if something had lightened, as if the park had let go of something. The forest was no longer buzzing. No insects, no birds, nothing. Even Bailey didn't run ahead. She stayed close to my feet, her tail down. As she walked, she constantly watched something. I remember the last day as vividly as if it happened 10 minutes ago. I had just finished cleaning the last bunkhouse. No one had stayed there for weeks, but I wanted to be thorough. Dust was everywhere. On the beds, the windows, a coffee pot someone had forgotten to wash. It felt lonely, like a place waiting to be erased. I returned to the ranger station just before sunset. The sun was low, painting the trees in fiery gold. I fed Bailey, poured myself the last of the instant coffee, and sat at my desk, looking out at the ridge. I thought I should feel something, peace or a sense of closure, but all I felt was exhaustion. I took Bailey out of the ranger station and looked out at the trees across the ridge. The park was enveloped in silence, a kind of silence that should have meant everything was over. That's when I noticed it. On the edge of the forest, past the service road, a flicker of orange light low on the horizon. It wasn't the sun. The sun had already dipped behind the hill. This light was fire. I stood for a moment, hoping it was an illusion of the last daylight, but the light was steady. The park was supposed to be closed. The gates were locked, the signs posted. No one should have been there, let alone having a bonfire. I turned around, grabbed my keys and flashlight, and got into the truck. Bailey jumped into the passenger seat without a word. She was already staring at the light through the windshield. The fire wasn't far. I drove slowly along the service road, along the ridge, careful not to make noise on the gravel path. Turning past the old quarry junction, the light sharpened into a small campfire flame. It was burning just off the path. There was a single man staring into the flames. "You're not allowed to be here." He jumped and spun around. For a moment, he looked like he was about to bolt. "Don't run. You won't be punished. I just need to know what you're doing here." He looked at Bailey, then back at me.
"Are you a ranger?"
"The last one, named Samson." He hesitated, then nodded.
"I'm Jimmy."
I stepped closer and looked at the camera. "Taking pictures for a school project or something?" He shook his head.
"No. I posted the first photo 6 months ago."
I nodded. "I remember."
People online dared me to come back. Said I was lying. That it was fake. I wanted to prove them wrong.
He said it with a frustrated look on his face. "So you built a fire in a dry forest, pitched a tent near an abandoned mine, and started secretly filming?" Jimmy looked down.
I didn't think it was a big deal. The park's empty.
"It is a big deal. You could have been hurt. Or worse." He didn't argue. He looked tired.
I thought if I found something, it would all stop. If I caught it on video, they might believe me and leave me alone.
I looked toward the mine road. The trail wound past the clearing and down the slope into the scrub and thick forest. It was always dark there, even during the day. "Did you find anything?" He hesitated.
I think I heard something last night, but I didn't move.
That was a smart choice. Bailey sniffed the ground near the campfire and sat down next to him. Jimmy scratched her behind the ears. "Do you have a ride?"
I walked in from the main road. I hid my bike behind the ranger gate.
I convinced him it was time to leave, and he packed up with little resistance. Even a stubborn teenager knew the game was over. He doused the fire with a water bottle and kicked dirt over the coals. I waited for him to zip up his tent, then led him to the truck. The sun was almost set. A long golden stripe crossed the road. The sky above the mine was rapidly darkening. Jimmy sat in the back seat with Bailey. She leaned against him, as if she had already decided to forgive him. I turned the engine key. Gravel popped under the tires, and we rolled down the hill. Just as I reached the bend past the old mine entrance, I saw it, standing motionless at the edge of the trees near the mine. Its skeletal form loomed unnaturally silent above the bushes. Its limbs were long and thin, hanging in a way that suggested waiting rather than rest. The shape of its head was unmistakable, an old, rusty siren attached where a face should be, tilted slightly forward, as if listening to something buried in the ground. The metal was dull and pitted, as if it had been there for decades. It didn't move, didn't shift. It just watched, rooted to its spot as if it had always belonged there. I didn't look back. There was nothing to see, and nothing I could do by looking. I kept my hands on the wheel, my eyes on the road, guiding the truck through the last turn in the trail as the trees drew in tightly around us. Bailey shifted in the seat once, but made no sound. In the rearview mirror, the boy was small and quiet. His face was pale in the fading light. We drove past the gate without stopping, past the station, past the mine, and away from whatever stood near them. We fled. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can see it. Its shape never leaves my mind. It was too unreal, yet eerily vivid. Too wrong. Not a trick of light, not a blurry photo. It was there. Part of the landscape, yet separate from it, like something buried for too long, no longer belonging to the earth. I never went back to the park after that night, but I still wonder at night what it was doing, and if it's still there. Not every day, just often enough to be certain I'll never fully leave this place behind. Someone once said you can take the boy out of the forest, but you can't take the forest out of the boy. I used to laugh at that, thinking it was something parents said to kids who came home muddy. Now I understand what it really means. That night, I left the park. I didn't return the next day or the next week. I mailed back the keys and never wore the uniform again. The truck sat in the driveway for a long time before I sold it. Bailey still gets restless and excited whenever I put on my boots. I'm sure she thinks we're heading back to the park. We aren't leaving. At least, not going back there. The park reopened. Months later, when the season cooled and the online articles faded, they removed the mine from the brochures, put up better fences, rebranded the place with a shiny new logo and social media pages. Now, it's just another forest with safe trails and gift shop magnets. But I still keep in touch with them. The new head ranger sometimes emails me. Photos of moose herds, weather updates, strange questions when something weird shows up on a trail camera. He knows what I saw. Or at least, he believes that I believe it. That's enough. I'm not a ranger anymore. That chapter is closed. There's a certain peace in saying that. But I could never forget what I saw. Not just the shape in the trees. Not just the boy in the back seat. I never forgot what it meant to see something that shouldn't exist. Something that stood quietly, as if it belonged to that land more than I ever did. Siren Head. It still sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, like something from a comic book or a campfire story, but I saw it with my own eyes. It's not something you can just put away and forget. After I quit my job, I spent a lot of time looking at maps, not just of the park, but of forests all over the country. I started reading things I would never have looked at before: old hunter forums, cryptozoology threads, missing persons databases. The more I read, the more familiar the stories felt. Different places, different names, but underneath the surface, the same fear. Then an old friend reached out. He said a man, who used to be a ranger near the North Cascades, wanted to get in touch with me. He said he'd heard what happened. It seems information is being passed along discreetly through someone. He asked if I'd ever heard of a man named Sam Carver. I said I hadn't. Carver, it turns out, is no longer a ranger either. He's something else entirely. I don't know what to call it. Not a scientist, not a soldier, but he's made it his life's work to understand what's not in the books. Monsters, if that word is childish, or phenomena. He calls them anomalies. My friend said Carver is tracking patterns, disappearances, sightings, even strange frequencies picked up near old industrial sites. He has files going back decades, maps pinned across half the country, and something like Siren Head keeps showing up on the edges of the picture. I haven't met Carver yet, but I've got a time and a place. Neither he nor I are in any meaningful position anymore. No uniforms, no government patches on our sleeves. But if my friend's story isn't a wild goose chase, Carver has answers. Or at least, he'll have far better answers than I can ask myself. So I'm going. I don't know where this is going. I haven't promised anything yet. I just want to understand what I saw. To know why something like that was standing in the forest near the mine, in a park where kids were still walking around with cheap cameras and Lunchables. For now, that's all I can say. My bags are packed, the dog is ready by the door, and there's a long road ahead. Maybe I'll come back someday and write more of the story. Maybe I won't. But one thing's for sure. These woods are more than they seem, and there's certainly something unexplainable out there.